Hi, welcome to Blue Bites. Our guest today is Mr. J. Suresh. He has been involved in the fashion retail business for over 15 years, having built some of the most iconic brands and managed and brought to India some of the best brands in the world. He retired as the MD and CEO of Arvind Fashions Limited in 2021. He's a highly respected leader in the consumer and retail industry. His total work experience of over 40 years is divided between two companies, Hindustan Unilever Limited and Arvind Fashions. He has also spent 19 out of his 40 years as a CEO. Post-retirement, Suresh continues on the board of Arvind Fashions, is an independent director on the board of TCNS Clothing, and also has taken up the role of Senior Advisor with BCG. He is also a key spokesperson of the retail industry. He was the past chairman of CII's National Council of Retail, past chairman of India's Fashion Forum, and also serves as the National Council member of Retailers Association of India. Suresh is an alumnus of IIM Bangalore and engineering graduate from the Madras University. Hi Suresh. Welcome to this podcast, and thank you so much for recording this a second time. For all of our guests, we should tell them that this is the second time Suresh has graced us, come to this podcast to record with us. We actually lost our recording the last time. But Suresh, let me start with a very simple question. If you could just take us through your journey, because you worked in various industries like the Fmcg industry, fashion lifestyle industry. How has your journey been over the years? And what difference do you see between the fashion lifestyle industry and other industries?
See, I think, not multiple industries really, just two industries in a way. And I think more or less equally split, of course, slightly more in FMCG than fashion. 20 years in FMCG and 16 years in fashion. I think, if you really look at it, the big difference, of course, very obvious is the product is different. But more important, I think, is the product characteristics are very different. If you really look at an FMCG, any of the FMCG products, it's all about largely mass scale production. Now, of course, with D2C brands, there is a lot of customization and specific to a certain target group. But if you really look at it, largely FMCG thrives on mass scale production, thrives on efficiencies in multiple ways. Because, see, the scale is large in every way, because in terms of the product, the scale is very large in terms of mass scale. Similarly, in terms of distribution, it is large because you have to reach out to large number of outlets. In India, for FMCG, there is almost 50 lakh outlets. That's the kind of reach you should have for FMCG. So contrast that with fashion. Fashion is more about you're creating a product every season. So it's not the same product, repeated again and then again. You're creating a product, every season. And then also another big difference is typically in an FMCG, the difference in pricing between say a mass product and a premium product may be, at best 2x. But mostly it will be, 50 to 60%. But if you take fashion, I think it's very different because you can get a white shirt for 500 rupees and you can get a white shirt for 30,000 rupees also. So that kind of a wide, price, 500 to 30,000 vis-a-vis max 2x kind of the difference in the FMCG product. The reason why I'm saying this is how it completely changes the business model for both these industries. If you really look at FMCG, the talk is more about efficiency. You really say that, how I'm going to produce my product efficiently, because a small efficiency improvement can lead to large benefits because it's all mass scale production. Similarly, how efficiently I'm going to reach so many outlets, how efficiently I'm going to convey my brand message to a large cross section of people. So it's all about efficiency, and in a boardroom, the talk in not even in the boardroom and even in operating teams, the talk in FMCG will always about how we are going to improve efficiency, whether it's a distribution efficiency, supply chain efficiency, manufacturing efficiency, or marketing efficiency. On the other side, in fashion, I think a large part of the conversation is about the product, because you're changing the product every season, so it hinges on that. And similarly, your product price range is also very different. So that means if you're selling a shirt at 30,000 rupees, the kind of imagery, the kind of communication, kind of connect you should have with your customers is very different from a mass product. So as against reaching as many outlets as possible, here it's all about selective set of outlets you want to reach, even if it's a mass brand. Even if it is a mass brand, you may not want to reach out to each and every outlet which sells clothes. And of course, if it is a high-end brand, you have your own stores or very niche kind of maybe an online kind of a distribution. So that is a big difference, that one is all about efficiency, the other is about the product. I think to some extent, things are changing on both the sides. What is really happening is in FMCG, people are talking about, how I am going to create micro segments and then cater to those micro segments, which means I will not mass produce, but I'll produce for micro segment. So to some extent, the production size is coming down, and people are talking about premiumization. So price do not become that critical, or on the other side, the efficiency improvement will not become that critical, because you are trying to give a better experience to the consumer. Similarly, on the fashion side, I think efficiency is now started, becoming a part of the conversation. Otherwise, efficiency was never part of the conversation in fashion. With fast turnaround online, and you're able to pick up the trends very quickly. How you're going to efficiently produce something and turn it around and then closer to the market, give it to the consumer closer to the market, is more important than sort of thinking almost 18 months in advance on the trend, and then I produce and then think that after 20 months consumer will like it. So I think things are changing on both the sides, but still FMCG will be driven by efficiency and fashion will be driven by product.
This is very interesting. So does that mean that actually inventory is more efficient in a FMCG business than in the fashion business? Do we get more turns?
No doubt about that, because FMCG typically gets, maybe if you're a very good brand, you may get 24 tons also. But 12 tons is pretty common. I'm not talking about sort of weak brands, but sort of good average to good brands can get a turn of anything between 8 to 12 tons. Basically, it turns around every month. Whereas if you take fashion, the turns, this is where I think the thought process is changing, because in fashion we always used to take it for granted that if you're doing 3 to 4 turns, I'm doing exceedingly well. If you're doing 2 turns, you're quite happy about that. At least I'm doing 2 turns. So that's why I think that the thought process is now changing. Then the question is coming that if some other product can do 12 turns, why can't we do at least 6 turns or 7 turns? Given the kind of information which is now available about the consumer trends, and also the factory is becoming much more flexible. No longer you're talking about continuous production, and I start producing a shirt and I'll only produce that shirt for the next 5 days. Kind of thought process is also changing. And also I think people have now started in fashion thinking about the system cost rather than the absolute product cost, because absolute product cost is about how cheap I can get that shirt, but system cost is about when you're thinking about producing that shirt, when you're producing the shirt, how much inventory you're holding, and when you're giving it to the market, and then how much of that is getting sold at full price and how much of that is getting sold at the discounted rate. So that is a system cost. If you are able to optimize the system cost, then the cost per piece becomes a little bit of irrelevant. So I think fashion industry is now moving from a absolute, product cost, cheapest product cost to a more optimum, system cost. But I'm sure that, because no industry can really, survive with that kind of a heavy working capital. I think some good, FMCG learning the premiumization, micro segments and all from fashion. Fashion will learn how to manage inventory from FMCG.
Well, this is very, very interesting. Suresh, coming to another question that I had, you've traveled abroad extensively, you worked with international brands, you brought a lot of international brands to India. How differently do these brands, international brands, work from Indian brands? I mean, how different are they from how we work? Are they more efficient? How come they become $1 billion and billions of dollar business, whereas we are still struggling to be a few hundred crores?
See, I would say that, they are much more efficient than Indian brands. I think the big difference for them, I think, is their design ability is, I think, at a notch, much higher compared to India. Maybe because if you really look at it, Indian market, ready to Indian wear market is 20 years old. But ready to wear market, whether it's US or any of the European countries, maybe it's 50, 60 years old. So you can't, sort of say that the experience, you gained in 60 years can be sort of caught up within 20 years. Of course, today technology is allowing you to sort of fast forward all these things. But if you really look at it a few years back, when there was not so much of technology, it takes time to learn. So I think that's the reason why maybe, the international brands do a better job on product. And in terms of efficiency, in terms of inventory turns, maybe they are marginally better. I don't think, they are. I think that is a thought process which is now coming into all the brands. Efficiency improvement, even whether it's Indian brand or international brand, I think the focus was on product and channel. So the advantage again the international brands had was to establish channel, which was not there in India. Because when you have a product which has got only 2 turns, you are not going to get recovery of your money that easily. So it's a chicken and egg situation, you have to put in money to recover that, but it takes longer time to recover. So your return on investment is much lower. So you don't have that kind of a money power to really play the game like an international brand can play, and they have built it over 30, 40 years. It's not that, they also did it sort of overnight. I think with this e-commerce and all that, there are many things, which are becoming, playing field is becoming level. I'm sure that, you will find a lot of Indian brands, really coming up and doing well. And I think, as such, I think many brands are doing well. Because if you really look at it, when you think about brands, you think about a very small section of the population, which is using international brands. But India is not just that small section of population, much larger. I mean, euphemistically called as Bharat. If you really look at Bharat, it's all largely Indian brands. It may be a regional brand, it may be a store brand, it may be a national Indian brand, but it's largely Indian products. Whereas the top niche, of course, because of the travel, aspirational, and all that, go for international brand. And again, I think it's a size, for example, if you really look at, see today, at least, there are brands which are 1,500 crores to 2,000 crores. And if you apply the purchase power parity, they are also 10,000 crore brands. So internationally also, in this category, it is not like a category where there are $10 billion brand, $20 billion brand. The largest brand is only $5 billion, the largest brand. So if you really look at it from that point of view and do a purchase for parity, we have also $2 to $3 billion brands, which has come up in 20 years, whereas that $5 billion, $6 billion brands have come up in 20 years. What I think is very large internationally are the store brands, whether it's Zara or H&M, Uniqlo. They are the ones which are $20 to $25 billion brands, but not product brands.
This is very, very interesting. I mean, I had never really thought of it that way. So Suresh, I just wanted to ask you a very interesting question that's been top of my mind for quite some days. The consumer has changed a lot. I mean, over the last 10 to 20 years, We have seen consumer change, there's taste in clothing change. So where do you see this consumer change actually driving business? And also, we are seeing changes in how the industry itself is evolving. There is consolidation happening somewhere, there are specializations happening. So if you could touch upon both these points and just tell us, how do you see the whole business kind of evolving going forward?
No, I think consumer change, if you really look at the last 10, 15 years, what I think is big difference is the question of availability. Availability has made a big difference. Many brands which are not available are now available, and they are also easily available through online because earlier the channel used to be the biggest entry barrier for any brand. Because you're not sure about the creditworthiness of the channel in fashion. There are few department stores, but they of course cater to a very small cross section of the society. Now, of course, there are larger footprint of value department stores they are providing, but in general, still like the way you say in FMCG, the Kirana stores drive the business. In India, I think still the small textile shops drive the business. It's changing. It's not the modern trade contribution in textile is far, far higher than the FMCG, definitely. And with online and the increase in the department stores, particularly the value department stores, the availability is becoming much better, which I think is also shaping the consumer. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the social media, which has sort of provided the aspirational, communicated the aspirational values to every person. Because today, Facebook or Instagram is not an urban phenomena. It's a phenomena across the country, including small town and rural. So you have created aspiration because TV was not there in India some time back. So after television came in, it built in a certain level of aspiration. Social media has built in another level of aspiration. Combined to that, there is availability and the increase in the standard of living, which in a way a measure is the per capita income. Because we have seen, for example, brands like Arrow, which could be afforded only by the senior management, and till 2005, when per capita income of India was still less than $1,000, suddenly started becoming mass premium from 2005. So it became mass premium and then it started becoming a larger brand. So now that $1,000 has become $2,000. So it will now bring in another new set of consumers for these brands. And not only that, India, when you say $2,000, it's also divided by a very large population. Even those large population was earning, similar to India in 2005, $500 and $600. So that's where the value department stores, those channels are really coming into play. So the combination of availability, building of aspiration through initially with television and then with social media, that combined with purchasing power, increasing, I think has shaped the consumer behavior, if you really look at it, towards fashion over the last, because fashion was not, while kapda is essential, fashion is not really, essential. I think now that's become essential because of these three things. Starting more, I would say, from aspirational, which availability, and then, of course, the most important, without money you can't, you can have aspiration, you can have availability, but you can't buy. So this, I think, is shaping the consumer behavior, and online has made a big difference to availability. So that is one aspect of availability. One aspect of what is shaping the consumer behavior. Okay. And you asked me about the second one. What was it?
The second one was more about how some companies are now consolidating. For example, Reliance has consolidated many brands under its wing. So earlier we used to have a lot more smaller companies, and then the way in which industries also. So there are now specialist brands, etc. So how do you actually see this whole industry?
So I think there are two kinds of things are happening. We are actually looking at, I won't say that still India is very consolidated, because if you really look at it, I think The market size today is what? On the lawyer side, the lawyer estimate is $60 billion, or I think around 500,000 crores.
Okay.
On a 500,000 crores, even some of the names you are mentioning, say you take, they're reaching, say at best, the best estimate 20,000 crores. So 20,000 crores on 500,000 crores is good, but it's still it's not like, because if you really look at it, again, a difference between FMCG and fashion, and this is not only India, I think worldwide, even in a very developed market, this is the case. In FMCG, number one brand will typically have a 30 to 35%, one-third market share.
Okay.
Number two brand will have around 20% market share. Number three brand will have around 15% market share. So 75 to 80% market share will be among three players, top three brands, and then the balance 25% share will be shared by a lot of players. Whereas if you really look at here, maybe the top brand internationally also may have 5% share, the number one brand. So you have 95%, maybe a second brand will have, if the number one brand is 5%, number two brand will be 3%, number 33 brand will be...
It's much more fragmented in a sense.
So you can say probably the dominant players will garner 15% of share, but 85% will still be fragmented. I think that's because it is impossible for one company to consolidate and take the inventory risk of the entire market.
Very true.
So suppose you take a 30% share, can I take a risk of inventory for 30% of the market?
No.
Impossible. So I think here it is going to be a very fragmented market. You will keep hearing this consolidation. While you keep hearing the consolidation on the other side, if you really look at the number of 100 crore brand in the D2C space, is much more than what it used to be in the past.
That's true.
Some 5 brands would have got consolidated with some one large company. There are now 20 brands which are of those 5 brand size, which are just doing D2C and very limited offline kind of a business. So this business, this fashion industry largely is going to be fragmented. You will still find big players. Maybe earlier the big player used to have 1 to 2% share. They will now become 5% share, 6% share. But I don't think anyone is going to go beyond 10%. They will still be around that only. So you will find consolidation on one side. You will find niche players, specialty players, coming on the other side.
So how would you define the market overall between consolidation, niche? And how do you think these players are going to, or how these segments are going to grow? Or what do you think is more valuable over a period of time? Where do you think people are creating more value?
See, if you really look at it today, what is really happening is still the brands at the higher end, when I say higher end, suppose you take shirt as an example. So anything above 2,000 rupees kind of a price point are the ones which are actually doing quite well. Mainly because the price point of 1,000 below is getting spread against many brands, including tailoring. But India, ultimately, the large population is the bottom of the pyramid. Even with maybe, once you reach a $3,000, $4,000, you will still find a very large middle class population. When I say middle class, not upper middle class kind of a thing, a middle class which can typically afford 1,000 to 1,500 rupee kind of a shirt. So that is going to be the belly of the market. So if you ask this question today, I think still the value is being created more on the upper end. But in the long term, it is going to be the belly of the market. And you start to some extent seeing that, with some of the value department stores becoming larger and also profitable. Not necessarily larger alone, because larger you can always become, but also profitable.
And there are brands like Manyavar and brands even in the online space like Bliss Club, who are very specialized into a single type of product, or that Go Colors and all that, and seem to have created quite a niche for themselves. How do you think that is going to play out? Are there going to be more players like that? Do you think brands are going to become more product specific rather than lifestyle specific going forward? Because when we look at it in the last, I think almost 15 to 20 years, we've not really seen any major lifestyle brands emerge either in the international market or in the Indian space. But we have seen a lot of these specialist brands coming in. So what do you think of is going to happen
See,
there?
market, if you really look at the Indian market, the way it is evolving is there are these conglomerates, which are actually having a large portfolio of brands. They play multi-brand, multi-category, multi-channel kind of a play. Something what Reliance is doing, what Madura is doing, acquiring brands across various categories and then playing various channels. So that is one set of people who are actually focused more on the top line. So they are looking at more driving, becoming a $2 billion company, 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion, maybe with 8 to 9% kind of a profit margin. Still on a very large base, you multiply 8 to 9, it's a very handsome profit. So that is one side. Then the center is what you're talking about, which is about, I take one specialist category and then go deep into that category. So any category, not only fashion, I think it's a rule that if you go deep into something, you become an expert in that. Yes. If you become an expert in that, your ability to create, strong brands will be very good only because you are sort of, you will understand the consumer very well because you have gone deep into a particular, for example, you gave Manure. They will understand the ethnic needs of the consumer, very well. Because they understand the consumer very well, they will come with a product which is liked by the consumer. So everything, falls in place. So any category you go deep, you learn more about your consumer, then you can come out with great products. You will communicate that much better. You know how to reach out to your consumers because you know them very well. So that is the advantage. And today, if you really look at from the Indian market point of view, the market, when I say market, I'm not talking about the garment or apparel market, I'm talking about the stock market. Stock market, if you really look at it, they are giving more value to the companies which have gone deep into a particular category. Example, Jockey into innerwear. Example, Manure, ethnic. Example, Go Colors, just the leggings. But valuation of that company is much better than companies with 5 to 6 times the turnover. So that is the thing. That's a area where, but it is always a temptation to go sidewards. So I created a brand, then let me sort of milk it, do this also, do that also. So that is something, if you're able to resist that temptation, and of course the corporate, what is whether it's a promoter or what is the shareholders want, they want to build a large sized company or they want to have a very good, valued company. Then, of course, there is a third set of companies which are also developing, not necessarily only in fashion, but the entire, D2C space, which are actually getting, sort of, valuation from the market. Very large part of, very large percentage multiplier of sales, mainly because they feel that they can actually grow faster. Because the moment you start, getting consumers, you understand your consumers online, then you can start selling more and more to that consumer. You increase the lifetime value to that consumer, so they can become larger and larger. So the fashion industry, in a way, this is the way the landscape is changing. This is one conglomerate, multi-brand, multi-category, multi-channel kind of a thing, then specialist and D2C. And then, of course, there will be gray areas. The center one will go to the left-hand side, saying if I've created a good brand. For example, Manure has created a good brand for ethnic. They can license their for a footwear business, for example, ethnic footwear business. So that's how the brands become lifestyle brands. So they can do something, maybe just some Indian ties or something like that. They can out license it to some ties which will create some ties which are very ethnic kind of ties. So these are the kind of, so you'll find brands going left and right. But this is how the market
will be going forward.
Going forward.